Topic. The idea is like unlike what I was enjoying.
Hi everyone, welcome to another knowledge session by LNOD Roundtable, the second part of our Wisdom Sutra series with Rajesh Kamath. At this point, I'd like to request all of you to ensure that your cameras are off and your mics are muted. We have already done it from the back end. Just a few ground rules before we move ahead during the session to ensure that we have the best of the learning experience. Your mics will be muted, your cameras would be switched off. However, we request you to keep the chat box as active as you can. Please share your thoughts, your comments. This is a very, very interesting topic, and maybe many of you would find very, you would be reminded of many anecdotes and many instances in your life that kind of relate to what we are talking about, and we are very happy and very keen to know about them. So keep posting on the chat box. Keep it very vibrant. Post your questions on the chat box. Towards the end of the session, we are going to pick up questions from the chat box and have Rajesh's view on that. For the ones who are joining us for the first time, just a quick introduction to LNOD Roundtable. So LNOD Roundtable is a not-for-profit forum that was created over 10 years ago and today serves over 25,000 members across the globe, largely from the HR, learning, and OD community, focused on driving change to impact in an organization. This is literally the wind beneath our wings, our governing council. We have Akil Basrai from Akil Basrai Consulting, Adil Malia, who is the chief executive of the firm, Professor Rajeshwar Upadhyay, who runs Par Excellence. Rajesh himself is on our governing council and keeps taking the knowledge sessions periodically every month. Dr. Sujaya Banerjee, who is the founder of the LNOD Roundtable and CEO of Capstone People Consulting. Manu Vadhav of Sony Pictures, Rajesh Padmanabhan from Talavi Business Catalyst, Rituanand of TCS, who has recently joined the forum, Bosco Dimelo from Conscious Development, Deborah from Minerva Engagement, and Gautam Chanani of JSW. And at this point, I'm very keen to let you all know about our upcoming session, which is Demystifying ISO 30415, which is essentially a guidelines by ISO on driving diversity and inclusion in an organization. We strongly recommend that you join the session. We have Deborah speaking about it, kind of unbundling the guidelines, and we have posted the registration link on the chat box. Do register and join us. Without wasting much time, coming back to the session today, we have Rajesh with us on the panel, who is an extremely passionate speaker, storyteller, consultant who brings together the Western insights and Indian ancient wisdom to drive change in organization and take it to impact. So I'm going to now hand it over to Rajesh, and I would once again request all of you to keep the chat box as vibrant as you can. Do keep sharing your comments, your stories, and your questions. Thank you.
So, namaste and good evening, everyone. The deck will come up in just a few moments, but let me take this opportunity to welcome you all for the second session in the series of Wisdom Sutras. Now, what is Wisdom Sutras and what is this about, especially if this is your first time? We are fortunate that LNOD Roundtable started this series because it gives us one more opportunity for exploration into Indian wisdom. For a large number of people, especially in corporates, which is majority of the audience who join us at LNOD Roundtable, it is interesting, but it is also strange that in India and Indian corporates, Indian wisdom itself is alien. So with that background, we said it is nice to have an exploration and opportunity to look at what Indian wisdom is and what can it do for us in organizations. What can it do for us to enhance ourselves, our teams, and our organizations. So that's how it started. So exploration and journey. Now, if you see the term Wisdom Sutras, it's not meant to be a stylish term. Oh, Wisdom Sutras, it sounds so intelligent. No. It was coined intentionally because it brings together wisdom, which is a modern word, and sutra, which is an eternal term, which probably got coined 10,000 plus years ago. And both of them cannot be taken lightly, because neither wisdom can be gained by just referring to that word, uttering that word, and nor can sutra be understood again by pronouncing that word. Both words imply going deeper within. So this is not a journey only of LNOD, Wisdom Sutra webinars, but it is also a journey within. So by signing up for these sessions, you have signed up for a journey within. And I'm sure we are all ready for that. Okay, that's the first thing I want to say. Today's session, just like every subsequent session, is going to build on the previous session. So in the last session, we only took up the word called prajna, and it being the Indian term for wisdom. It built a foundation. It built a foundation that, crisis will come, adversities will come, but do we actually think of how that is useful for us to build prajna? Today we take off from that very space and very place and very point where we stopped last time. So today's session is going to speak about Shama and Shama, right? You can also think of it as Shamta and Shama, okay? And we will see why. So without further delay, I'm going to request, yes, the screen is up, and let's go into this. Now, I want to start with the title itself for the benefit of those who were not there last time. So, uncommon wisdom for common challenges. So we are acknowledging that Indian wisdom is uncommon today. While it should be the oldest, but how much do we know about it? From my experience of the last about 10 years in this space, I can say it's not common. There are reasons for that which we won't go into, but we have this opportunity. Imagine a forum like LNOD Roundtable, which is a very popular forum for learning, and we have people like you joining up with your fullest interest. So thanks so much, all of you, for joining this in, and we will see some amazing explorations today into this topic. All right. Now, before I start, I also want to tell you that we had planned this topic almost 6 months back, this series. And now the interesting thing is, on this very second session's topic, we had planned Shama and Shama. Little did I know that this topic is going to coincide, this theme is going to coincide with the Jain occasion of Paryushan, which is so connected with our theme. Isn't that a divine coincidence? And this happens all the time whenever we do something that is with good purpose. So with that little back, I want to go into the topic itself. Just give me a minute. Yes. Sorry, it wasn't moving for a few seconds. Now, I spoke about Paryushan, whether or not you are involved with Paryushan. I'm sure one of the very common messages that you would have got for quite some time in the last month is Michhami Dukkadam. And some messages, and I received many, And I tried to respond to all of them, at least as many as I could. Some of the messages were very detailed. And it said something like, if I, yeah, I'm going to request everyone to please be on mute. Yes. It said something like, if I have hurt you intentionally or unintentionally, by mistake or by foolishness or by ignorance, by thought, word or deed, please forgive me, Michami Dukkadam. Okay, that's what it said. And I was amazed at the detailing that some people had done. Now it made me, it's giving me a message. I need some help, Rupali. It says, please ask the host to give you permission to record. I think otherwise it doesn't let me go ahead. Could you please?
So I'm going to re-give you the control rights.
Okay.
Do you have the rights now?
Okay, 1 minute. Let me just try again. Yes, it is. Thank you. And sorry, folks, for that, few seconds interruption. So since I received so many of those messages, I must admit, I use this forum also to share my frankest views. So it raised many questions in my mind. They were as follows. The first question that came to my mind is, what are the feelings accompanying these messages? People are sending out these messages. Are they sending these messages with feeling? Are they sending these messages as a ritual? Are they forwarding these messages? Are they copying these messages? That was one kind of question that came to my mind. Second question that came to my mind is, suppose I don't respond. And I'm sure these messages go out to hundreds of people. And if I do not respond as a receiver, what action does the sender take? Because, well, this is meant to be Michami Dukkadam, and you want the other person to acknowledge that you're forgiven, hopefully. So if there was no response, what action does the sender take? This was the second question that came to my mind. And most of all, the question that came to my mind is, do we have to wait for once in a year to ask forgiveness for all the wrongs that were done? Can this not be done regularly by all? That means on an ongoing basis. Hopefully, it was meant by most of the people who sent it. But this led me to a further exploration, and I'm going to share some of this exploration with you so that you too can explore. Okay, so here we go. Now, as I mentioned last time in our first session, for whatever you want answers for, you can get responses in Indian civilization and in our Shastra. So whether you look at the Upanishads or you look at the Itihas comprising of the Ramayana and Mahabharata, or you look at the Bhagavad Gita, or you look at the Jatak, or you look at Patanjali Yoga Sutras or any other, you will get some of the answers, but I warn you, or rather caution you, you will also get more questions for your answers. And I welcome that. So let's go to the word called Shama. Now, Shama is a very common Indian term. Again, I do not know how often the word is used with genuine feeling, but it's a commonly used term. And what is the meaning of this term that comes to our mind? I presume there is only one. And that word is forgiveness. Now, this is the meaning that I'm sure all of you thought of the moment the word Shama appeared on the screen, isn't it? But in Indian wisdom, that's not all. There is more to it. No word has the meaning that first comes to your mind. It is only one of the meanings, or it could be just the uppermost surface of that meaning. So one has to go deeper. What is that? Let's see. Okay. So what is the multi-layered thing? When we spoke about wisdom sutras itself, we said for wisdom, you have to go 7 layers down. Some of you may remember it when we spoke about Prajna Gunaha. We spoke about 7 layers. The 8th layer will finally lead you to Tattva Abhinivesha, going into Prajna. And so Indian wisdom is multi-layered. What else could forgiveness, rather the word not forgiveness but Shama, mean? That brings us to another word which is very closely linked, same root. Another Indian word, that is Shamata. Isn't this interesting? Shama is forgiveness, but Shamata is not forgiveness. Okay, I'm going to wait for a minute, and folks on the chat, please tell me, what does Shamata mean? I know all of you know, but I would like to hear it from you. Capability, strength, capacity. Okay, wonderful. All right. Caliber, efficiency, skill. Wow, lovely. Okay, so I have the same words to start with. Shamta is capability and a capacity. So Shama is also a capability and capacity. All right, think about this. It is not just about the ability to say, forgive me. Is it the capability to tolerate? No, it is the capacity to endure. It's not a play on words, because tolerating means a compromise. Capacity to endure means you do it willingly and happily, because you have it within. You have, let's use the term some others use, you have the ability within. You have the skill within. You have the efficiency within. The closest English word that can be associated with Shama is forbearance. And you can see the word bear in that. And this is, of course, not the animal bear, but the action of bearing, the verb bear. Okay, so most of all, let's understand this now again. Shama is not just the action of saying, I forgive you, or asking for Shama, asking for forgiveness. It is a capability, a capacity, a willingness, and a skill to endure whatever we are faced with. So what does this tell us? That it is a strength. It is not a compromise. Did you think of this? Shama is not a weakness. Asking for forgiveness is not a weakness, because we hesitate many a times. How can I ask for Shama? And there are several people, including people in the same family, who would say that, "Main Shama nahi kar sakta," thinking that it could be a weakness, it could be seen as a weakness. Least of it, it is a strength. And it is not about just pacifism. It is not just about making a compromise because there is no other go, no other recourse. Okay, now this is something that is interesting and which Indian wisdom gives us. Now, there are many Upanishads and sources, and one of the sources is the Chandelier Upanishad, where Shama gets mentioned. I want to tell you that there are many sources. You have read this in the Bhagavad Gita, which we will refer to. You've read this in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which we will speak in passing. Now, Chandelier Upanishad, by the way, I want to tell you, for those who are not at all aware of Chandelier Upanishad, is a Yoga Upanishad. That means it is an Upanishad which is specifically concerned with the theme of yoga alone. Not just yoga asana, but yoga, the philosophy. So there is a full Upanishad on yoga. And you also know there's another one called Yogeswara Upanishad. So here is Chandelier Upanishad. And in the first chapter, there are 3 chapters in Chandelier Upanishad. In the first chapter, in the first verse itself, it gets mentioned, Shama nama priya priyeshu sarveshu tadanapa upajayeshu sahanam. Sahana. Now, Sahana sounds painful. But here, it is once again, what is the definition of Shama? Forbearance of the pleasant or unpleasant, praise or censure. This is Shama, says Chandelier Rishi. Okay, so that, further reinforces for us that Shama is the capacity of forbearance. And Shama is not just the verbal ability of saying sorry or saying you are forgiven. How do we understand this better? No better way in Indian wisdom than going to the stories. And Indian wisdom is so full of stories, my dear friends, it's a delight. I have been reading stories from Indian wisdom now, right since childhood, but very intensely for the last 10, 11 years. I don't think I've covered even 50% of the stories available. And that too, I'm talking about 50% of the stories that I'm aware are there. So one of the richest sources is the Jatak Tales. And Jatak Tales, you may know what it is about, but I'm going to reveal that to you later. So I'm going to speak about the story of the golden deer called Ruru. Not sure how many people have heard this story. So I'm going to narrate it anyways. If you do know it, listen to it with what I called as fresh ears, as if you've never heard it before. So in a distant, dense, thick forest, a very beautiful one, there was a handsome deer called Ruru, a male deer. Now, Ruru was not only handsome, he was golden and various hues of golden all over. And just as he was handsome, he was also wise, which is a rare combination. He had prajna. He had the wisdom among the greatest which animals could have. And Ruru was a very popular animal, a very popular creature in the forest. However, wherever someone is beautiful and has all the gun, all the qualities, especially among animals, then there is also a danger. And that danger is always from humankind. Because where there is beauty in nature, humans cannot just enjoy looking at it. They have to acquire it. They have to grab it. And Ruru was extremely conscious of this worry, of this fear, of this possibility. So as far as possible, he stayed away from anywhere close to civilization. He remained in the thickest parts of the forest. But one day, as Ruru was grazing in the forest, suddenly he heard a wailing, a cry of distress, which you can make out very easily. And it happened to be a human cry. Being also compassionate within, Ruru ran towards that sound to see who is it. And Ruru saw that there was a thick stream of water in the forest, as there often are. And in that forest, in that stream was a man who was being flown by because of the thick stream. He had lost his balance in the current, and obviously somewhere upstream he may have been trying to wash his face or hands or whatever, and lost his balance and fell into that thick stream of water which was gushing through the forest. Now Ruru, despite his aversion, or at least you can say wanting to avoid human beings. He could not bear to see someone in pain and someone who required his help so badly. So Ruru went and without too much thought, jumped into the river. He was strong and he asked that man. Now another thing that you will see in many stories is that the animals can speak and communicate with all fellow beings. So Ruru also had that ability. If anything, his ability was even more special. So he told that man, quick, grab my leg, cling on to me and I will pull you out. That man felt a sudden ray of hope. Not only did he grab his leg, but grabbing that leg, he found himself possible to mount that deer. So he climbed on the back of that deer and Ruru was able to pull him out of the water, out of the stream. And the man, because of the struggle in that stream by now, had got so tired, so weary, that he fell unconscious. Ruru started licking him all over so that he would be woken up and also to give him some comfort. The man regained consciousness and he was extremely thankful. He said, I didn't know that animals can be so compassionate. Thank you so much for saving my life. I will be forever indebted to you. Please tell me, what can I do to you? What is the one thing that I can do to thank you? Ruru said, if you really feel that way, my request to you is that please don't let others know about my whereabouts. Because humans being what they are, they will certainly come looking for me over here, and then not just me, the lives of many other creatures will be endangered. Please, can you ensure this? The man, without blinking his eye, said, definitely, I will keep my promise and I will not let anyone know that I got saved by someone called Ruru who looks like this, as beautiful as you are. And the man went about his way. Now, in that very kingdom, the queen had a special ability. She often saw vivid dreams, and whatever she saw in her dreams came true. So one night, she dreamt that a golden and beautiful, handsome deer was actually conducting a discourse in their own palace. He was speaking about dharma and its manifestations to the courtiers and the king and the queen. The morning that she woke up, the next morning, she shared that with the king. And she also said that, please, can you get this deer for us? He is a very noble one. The king knew from past experiences that her dreams never lied. So he announced in the entire kingdom that so and so is the description of a deer. A golden deer, various hues of golden all over, and so on and so forth, whatever that description was. Whoever can find this deer will be rewarded handsomely. Yes, you guessed it right. That man who was saved by the deer and had promised never to reveal it was overcome by greed, like it happens to so many humans, so many people. And so he went to the king and he revealed how he had been saved one day in the forest by this deer. Now, here is what happened. They went to the forest, both that man, because he had to show them, he promised to show them where he had found the deer. And so also the king, he went with a fairly large retinue of soldiers. And they kept looking. The man took them into the wilderness deeper and deeper. And then just as he was about to point to the deer saying, there he is, the moment he pointed out, his hand immediately fell off from his body. He was not able to point out at all. He started raising his hand fell off. But the king had already noticed a movement in the bushes and he saw the deer coming out. And he was about to, let his arrow fly and bring the deer down, because there's no other way to capture a deer than an arrow. The deer Ruru spoke. He came close and he said, "Wait, before you let that arrow fly from your bow, can you tell me," that man obviously was left behind somewhere. He said, "Can you tell me, how did you find out about my whereabouts?" And the king revealed that it was so and so man who told me where I would find you. The deer shook his head and says, "It is better to save a log of wood in a floating stream than a man who promises to keep his word, but obviously deserts like this man has. Better to save a log of wood than a man in distress who promises to keep his word and does not." But luckily now the king, listening to the deer, immediately saw that this was no ordinary deer, and he requested that deer to tell him few words of wisdom. But before that he said, "You mean to say you actually saved this man's life, and he promised you that he would not reveal your whereabouts, and still for a petty reward broke his promise? Let me kill him." And he started aiming his arrow at that man. And Ruru, mind you, he was captured or almost captured. He gave himself up. But Ruru immediately said, "Well, I have already offered Shama to him. Please don't shoot him. Let him be. I did not expect anything different. It's fine." The king was extremely impressed and he said, "For your wisdom and for all the qualities that I have noticed in just the last 10 minutes, I request you to please come to the palace." Now Ruru accepted that advice, accepted that request, and he was taken in a royal chariot to the palace, where for several days he gave discourses on dharma to the king, the queen, and the courtiers. Lot of beautiful advice. And then after that, he returned back to the forest. That's the story of the golden deer, Ruru, my dear friends. Now, if you're wondering that who was this golden deer, all the stories of the Jatak Tales are about what we call as Bodhisattva, the essence of Buddha in that deer, Ruru. And from this we learn the capacity of the deer, the capability of the deer to actually use the quality of forbearance. But I want to ask you, and you can put it on the chat, if you have some reflections and introspections on this story. Yeah, please put it on the chat. I'd love to hear. What do you think? What are your thoughts, reflections, introspections about this story? Yes, Mandar says, only strong people can do Shama. Wonderful. Yes, what else? Only strong people ask for Shama, says Ashish. Okay, beautiful. Both are equally relevant. What else comes to mind? Please put it on the chat. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Come on, friends. Yes. Kasturi says only strong people forgive. Yes, what else? Shama is something which needs to be nurtured from the time one is young. Okay, I can't pronounce that word, but thank you. Shama takes you near and closer to Purnatva. Purnatva. Okay, wonderful. Shama makes you complete. Shama sets you free. Shama for others is liberation for self. Wonderful. Amazing. All right. So all of us are speaking about Shama as a capacity, a capability now. Beautiful. It's not just an action. Asking and giving Shama requires courage. Actually, see, forbearance is the capacity from which forgiveness comes. So forbearance, Shama within, leads to Shama outside. Shama is energy, Shama is power. Right? Very beautiful. And you may also realize that Shama is actually there in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras also. And it is one of the 10 niyams, right? 10 yam, one of the 10 yams, sorry, not niyams. One of the 10 yams in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. That means it is an essential capacity to build for everyone. Capacity to bear nuisance, says Mandar. Okay, very interesting. Great. Thank you. So let's also look at what other lessons can we learn from this. What connections, what applications can we get from this? Yes, Shama frees the self, Deepika. Absolutely right. Now, there are myriad references to Shama in our various Shastra and also Itihas. Here are some of them. The very popular one, I'd also, for those who got invite from me, I'd also sent along a speaking tree article with that, a link to a speaking tree article. And there was mention of how Draupadi forgave the son of Dronacharya, even though he had killed her sons, right? That was one which was there in that article. But there are so many more. Kaikeyi was the one who had loved Sri Ram so much. And yet she was the one because of whom Dashrath, the great king, was forced, rather he had no choice, just to keep his word of the two boons, he was sent into the forest almost immediately after he was announced to be Yuvraj. So just like Draupadi forgave Ashwatthama, Kaikeyi was forgiven by Sri Ram. Okay, that's one example. Another, and you know this, so you please explore and go deeper into what does it speak about the person, both who had the forbearance and both who received the forgiveness, right? Vashishtha Rishi towards Vishwamitra Rishi. Now, even though both of them are there most commonly among the Sapta Rishis, Vishwamitra didn't get there very easily. As you know, it took him a long time to reach every stage. Right from being a Kshatriya first, a king, and then becoming a Rajarshi, and then moving towards a Brahma Rishi. During that process, that entire journey, he caused a lot of distress, a lot of harm to Vashishtha Rishi. But Vashishtha Rishi was the one to declare him to become the Brahma Rishi and was always appreciative of his capacities for austerities, for various kind of tap and yajna, right? So Vashishtha Rishi also showed forbearance towards Vishwamitra Rishi. So despite the fact he was put to so many trials by Vishwamitra himself, but Vashishtha showed Shama. Another example, I'm sure some of you know this story of how a disgruntled Brahman continuously spat on Eknath, the great saint Bhakt from Maharashtra, right? Every time Eknath came out from the tank where he used to have a bath, the man would, because he was angry at him, would spit on him. And he was testing his patience. And yet Eknath did not get, hassled and kept going back and having a bath. Till finally the Brahman himself said, I am so tired of spitting on you. How are you not fed up? How are you keeping your silence? He said, you gave me an opportunity to have a bath and cleanse myself so many times today. How can I be angry at you? I am grateful to you. Can you see how Shama is shining through? It was not at all about forgiveness over here. It was something much deeper. And of course, the popular examples of Buddha, you heard this story by, a few people or one person continuously abusing Buddha. Right now, who was that, or who are those who were abusing Buddha? They were basically the relatives of the new disciple Bhardwaj, and they were upset that Buddha had actually initiated him and made him a monk. So they hurled abuses at Buddha, saying that you have taken this person away from us, kept abusing him. Buddha was very calm. And finally, just like it happened in Eknath's case, the relatives also got tired. And they said, we have abused you so much. How come you are not upset? He said, because what happens when someone gives a present to me, but I don't accept it, then whom does it belong to? The relative said, the giver. So he said, exactly, you all abused me, but I did not accept that abuse. Then who is it lying with? Who does it remain with? They got the answer. So friends, Shama manifests itself in many different ways. Just think about all of it. Sri Ram was all praised for Kaikeyi even after all that she had done, saying that he got an opportunity to keep his dharma, his purpose, his righteousness. Vashish Rishi was completely okay with Vishwamitra Rishi because he felt that this man needs it as part of his evolution. He could see it. Therefore, he was a much senior and evolved and accomplished Rishi. Similarly, Eknath ji could see that what's there to be upset about? It only helps me to cleanse myself more and more, both physically and mentally. And Buddha also looked at it as an opportunity to teach a few new lessons. So friends, very important lessons today we learned on Shama. Shama comes from Shamta, and adversities are actually opportunities to build capacity. All these four stories teach us this. Adversities are considered as opportunities. Whether it was Ruru, whether it was Sri Ram, whether it was Vashish Rishi, whether it was Eknath, whether it was Buddha. Now you may wonder, so what relevance is it to us? We will come to a case a little later. It is 100% applicable for all of us at all times, and not only when we are on the path of spirituality. We will see that in just a bit. Okay, so with this, let's move ahead to another theme, our second theme for the day today. But just before that, we will look at one reference in the Bhagavad Gita. So if you look at, I know several Indians are very familiar with Bhagavad Gita, even though not everyone has gone in depth. That's my impression. So in the 10th chapter, in the 4th sutra, there are several qualities which are mentioned, which Krishna says, Sri Krishna says, they have emerged from me. He says, Bhavanti bhava bhutanam mataha eva pratigvida. Pratigvida, all the species, various earthly creatures. These traits which are shown by them have actually emanated from me. And one of those are Shama. So Shama is a divine quality. It is a reflection of the divinity within. Please take this, to heart and dwell over it. It is not an ordinary capacity. The higher the capacity of forbearance, of Shama, it is a manifestation of the divinity within you, my dear friends. Okay, so now let's go to our next sub-theme. So Shamta leads to Shama. Shama, we saw what came from Shamta. But this Shamta should also lead to something called Shama. Now, Shama also is a word which is not new to many readers and students of the Bhagavad Gita. We will come to that in just a bit. But not before I have shared with you the story of Maha Kapi. If there was one story from the Jatak Tales, which is vivid in my mind because I had it in school in English, I think, it is of the Maha Kapi. All right. What is the story of the Maha Kapi? Maha Kapi, now Kapi or Kapish refers to the animal called the monkey, right? So now the Mahakapi was a king of the monkeys high up in the Himalaya. And in the Himalaya mountains, again, there were lots of beautiful forests. In one of those forests lived 8,000 monkeys. And their king was Mahakapi, who was the largest of them all, also the strongest, and deservedly the king because he had all the other qualities which even Ruru had. Compassion, virtues, all the wonderful qualities which are required. So Mahakapi ruled over this large band of monkeys. Now in the same forest was a large tree with some extremely delicious fruits. Of course, when we learnt it in school, the fruit was revealed to be mango. But in the original Jatak Tales, it does not say it is the mango. It is just a delicious exotic fruit. All right. So this tree was full of these exotic fruits. Just give me 5 seconds. There's some noise in the back.
Rajesh, I believe you're on mute. Rajesh, are you there?
Yes, I'm there, Rupali. Yes. So, I'm sorry, it went ahead, I think. My apologies. Yes. So, in this forest, there, as I mentioned, there was a tree that was full of these exotic fruits. And with that again came a danger because right below that tree was a river that was flowing a long, long way. And so if the fruits fell into that river, the chances were it floated right up to civilization where human beings were, and they would come and attack these monkeys to get the fruit, of course. And so Mahakapi told all his subjects that I want you to ensure that none of the fruits fall into the river, because there was a large branch of that tree that was overlooking the river and was suspending its various fruits over that stream. So such was the instruction of the king to his subjects. And so all of the monkeys ensured that they followed those instructions. Unfortunately, one of the fruits seemed to be shielded from sight because of a beehive very close by. And so that remained, and that fruit, after ripening, fell into the river. And where would that fruit flow? It flowed straight to where the king of that kingdom was camping along with his various queens and family members. He had come for an excursion somewhere downstream. And as soon as one of the members of that retinue saw that fruit, oh, he was filled with, okay, I don't know why the screen moved. He was filled with a sudden, aroma of that fruit. And the aroma of the fruit filled the air, and it was, so irresistible that he took it to the king, and the king said immediately, wow, what an amazing fruit. We must have more of this. Where can we get it from? And with that in mind, they started going upstream. And very soon they located the tree which had hundreds of these fruits. But along with the hundreds of these fruits, there were also hundreds of these monkeys. And so the king decided, Ananya, can you please go on mute? Can we mute everyone, or it's not possible? I think someone once in a while keeps going. Yes, so I'll continue. So, yeah, so they saw the monkeys, and immediately the king told his soldiers, shoot those monkeys, bring them down with your arrows so that, they don't disturb us when we take these fruits. And now this massacre was about to begin, but Maha Kapi was alert as ever. And he noticed, and immediately the king looked at the hill which was nearby on the opposite bank. Now it wasn't easy. The king went up to Maha Kapi, went up to the end of the branch which was overlooking that river. And from there, because of his size, he was able to jump across to the other bank. He realized it would not be possible for most of the monkeys to do that because they were smaller than him. Now, what is the solution for this? So what he did is that he found a vine, a branch, a flexible branch. He tied that around himself and he formed a bridge from the other bank, and he jumped to catch the branch that was overhanging over there. So he formed a human bridge from that tree to the other bank. And he immediately called out to all the other monkeys, his subjects, and he told them, please jump over me and go quickly to the other side. Imagine 8,000 of them. They began. And there was a scramble, but they all followed, and in a very disciplined way, they started going over to the other side. The king stood over there in that position till every single monkey had crossed over except one. The last monkey to cross over was an evil monkey called Devdatta. And Devdatta was always jealous of his cousin Maha Kapi. As if to teach him a lesson, he jumped with all his might on the back of Maha Kapi, who was strong, but imagine he had already borne the weight of so many monkeys. He could not bear this weight. So with that jump on his back, Maha Kapi's back broke, but he still stood there till Devdutt had gone on to the other side. The king was watching this all the time because he was amazed at what this monkey king was doing. And so he brought him down and he immediately instructed his soldiers that don't shoot. He must have already told them earlier, bring down this Maha Kapi and lay him down on the ground and do everything to heal him back. And so Maha Kapi was brought down by the soldiers and they made him lie on a soft cloth over there. And while he lied over there, the king spoke to him. And he said that I am amazed at what you could do. Why did you have to do this for so many of your subjects, where you yourself have broken your back? And Maha Kapi had only this to say, that if I have the right to rule over all of them for all this time, surely it is my duty to ensure that each of them is saved. And therefore I did it. And then the king again repeated and he said, but look at you, your back is broken. And what he said is, my back may be broken, but my mind is at peace. I repeat, my back may be broken, but my mind is at peace. And with a great smile, he passed away. That's the story of Maha Kapi, my dear friends. What are your reflections here? Please put it on the chat. What do you think? A beautiful story this is. Yes, it is brilliant. Go on. What comes to mind? Yes, elements of leadership. Absolutely. So first of all, the king even being a monkey king, once again was a bodhisattva. The essence of Buddha, where all the qualities of true leadership were there in the person. And one of the qualities linked to our earlier point was Shama itself. But what else did you see? True leader and thinking of Praja. Absolutely, Deepika. So even as he lied dying over there, he was thinking about the Praja and about having saved them. He was leading from behind. Wow, wonderful, Alapini. You picked up a superb concept which often we speak about for servant leadership. So I may be leading from the front at most times, but here I'm leading from the behind. Very good. Anything else? What do you make of the king's words as he finally left his, body, where he said that my back is broken, but my mind is at peace? What do you make of this? Why was his mind at peace? Especially when Devdutt, by the way, Devdutt was always the one, even in Buddha's human life. Devdutt was the cousin who was always jealous of him and in some way always tried to, get the better of Buddha. Loving whatever you are doing, wonderful. So if you love what you do, including leading your people, then obviously you don't have a problem with whatever it takes and whatever comes as an outcome of that, no matter how painful it may be at times. Yeah, isn't it? So with that, I'm going to go to what more can we learn from today's session, and we come to the, yeah, someone said peace of mind. Wonderful. So what does that mean? He served his purpose, and that is one of the elements of Shama. So Shama comes from the same root and is simply a variant of the term that we know as Shanti. But while Shanti is a very common term and may be used only in a specific context, Shama is a far more broader term. So Shama has many meanings. One of it is alleviation. So it could be alleviation of pain. It also means peace, like we know from the word Shanti. It also means equanimity. Whether there is suffering or whether there is joy, I feel similarly at all times. Equanimous. Doesn't matter what the circumstance, I feel at peace. Right? What else? Tranquility. And one of the meanings of this is eventual happiness. Now, this is the most beautiful one. Eventual happiness. It implies that there will be suffering in the journey. It implies that the journey won't be easy. It implies that even though I want, I will not get happiness and joy along the way. But eventually, we don't know when, eventually there will be happiness. Yes, absolutely right, Manda. The bearing of the suffering, he says, for duty or purpose will lead to eventual happiness. And friends, I want to tell you that this is the closest meaning of the Shama that finally Maha Kapi got. Imagine you are dying and still you feel happiness and peace of mind. What quality is that? You are dying. That is Shama. Now, do we need to die to get Shama? Obviously not. So then what else can it mean, and how can we learn this from our Shastra? So once again, Shama comes in many Shastra. It is mentioned in the Upanishads. It is part of the Tattva Bodh of Sri Adi Shankaracharya. And it is also a part of Kautilya Arthashastra or Chanakya. So in what context does this get mentioned? Let us see. Okay, so this time I'm going to take the Kautilyan context first, which is extremely beautiful. Karma Rambhanam Yoga Radhano is Vyayama, and Karma Phala Upabhoganam, and that is what he speaks about I'm so sorry. And that is what he speaks about in the context of Shama. So Shema Radhanam is Shamaha. So Vyayam is that. Now Vyayam is again a unique term. We use it for exercise, but Kautilya uses it in the context of all activity directed towards purpose. So Vyayam is that which brings about accomplishment of everything that we undertake in the direction of purpose. I repeat, Vyayam is, all that activity that is taken in the direction of the purpose. That's Vyayam. Then what is Shama? Shama is that which brings about the security of enjoyment, or call it fulfillment of the fruit of that activity. I repeat, Shama is the fulfillment that comes from the fruits of that activity, which means Vyayam is the action in the direction of the purpose. Shama is the fulfillment in simple words. What I have given you is the literal English translation, but you can simply call it as action and fulfillment, provided that action is in the direction of the purpose. So Mandar, you got it extremely right. If your action is towards the purpose, when your purpose is fulfilled, that which you feel within is Shama. And that's why Maha Kapi had that Shama even as he closed his eyes for his final journey, right? Now, let us see what Tattva Bodh says. And Tattva Bodh says, Shama kaha, and it is answered by the Acharya as Mano Nigraha. What is Shama? Shama is the Nigraha of the mind. Now, Nigraha can mean control, but it also implies mastery. Now, see, connect the two. Kautilya said it is what you feel as a result of the fulfillment, which is got by accomplishment of your action, of your purpose. And now Adi Shankara says it is the mastery over the mind. And mastery, once again, cannot be merely a feeling. Mastery is a capacity. Mastery is also a capability. So both of these are capacities, Shama and Shama. Both of them are Shamtas. Okay, see how beautiful this is. Now, this can happen only in Indian wisdom. Peace of mind, otherwise you think, is it a capacity? At best, we say peace of mind is a choice. But here it's a capacity, that means you can build it. Shama is a capacity, that means you can build it. So both of these capacities can be built, and there are several examples in our history. Let us look at three of them, two from our history and one from world history. So Nelson Mandela was under imprisonment for 2.5 decades plus. And still he said that the imprisonment of my mind I have to leave behind. And after he became president, whatever he did towards the building of what he called as a rainbow nation gave him Shama. So even after all the injustice that was wreaked on him through years and years by the invaders, finally he could overcome it through his own accomplishment. And what he felt at the end of it is not injustice, not pain, but Shama. Okay, one example. Chanakya or Kautilya had a very, very difficult childhood where his father and mother, his father got arrested and died. Mother died in grief. He was thrown out of his school because his father was considered as a traitor by a tyrant of a king. Because of that, his living became difficult and he finally had to leave Patliputra, modern day Patna, and go to Takshashila. And there he should have been completely broken because of past experiences. But he groomed himself, trained himself, taught himself. Of course, in Takshashila he got the education, but the grooming was done by himself. And with his vision and his action following it, Akhanda Bharat happened for the first time ever. Once that was done, Chanakya felt Shama. His mission was completed and fulfillment. Similarly, Samrat Ashok, he had a very difficult life. There were several attempts on his life by his stepbrothers themselves when he was a child. And still, through all of them, he could withstand, overcome, and finally became Samrat. After that also, it didn't stop because so much of the ground that was lost earlier, he had to get it back, win it back. And the last frontier was Kalinga, which was the very powerful kingdom of modern day Orissa. And in that, there was so much of bloodshed that finally he realized the futility of it all. And he converted himself from a violent king to a peace-loving king, a true Ashok, one who does not feel any shok, no grief. So he too felt Shama. After he did that, and he started sending out his son and his daughter in different directions to spread the message of peace and love under Buddhism. So friends, now let us see if all of this is so amazing, how do we apply this to business, right? Because that's our context. Think about it. This entire series of Wisdom Sutras has been designed during the pandemic, which has still not subsided. It continues. We don't know when it will end. We are seeing variants after variants. Things are definitely better in India, but are we shielded from the rest of the world? How do organizations react? In the last session, we looked at the case of Amul, the large conglomerate in dairy products, which we have seen, and of course, many, many other food products. This time, we'll see the example of ITC Group. How did they respond during the pandemic? The pandemic hurt everyone. There's nobody who has not been hurt, especially during its first wave, when it took us unawares and shut down our businesses. And during that very time, ITC created a 12-part roadmap. And if you look at the roadmap continues. It does not stop anywhere. So it's part of business continuity process. And then these 12 steps, you can see that they have covered every possible stakeholder. Right from the 150 crores that was first set up as a contingency fund, not for themselves, but for the underprivileged, for those in distress, for those in crisis, for the poor, for the underprivileged. 100 crores they donated towards the PM fund. Well, you may say most companies did, so let's skip that. They ensured that they reached with their essential products across India. Was it just a sales pitch? Let's look at the rest as well. We saw lots of ads of Savlon on TV. They ensured that their hand sanitizer Savlon production was ramped up very heavily. But they provided food and hygiene products for the vulnerable completely free of charge. They distributed cooked food meals to migrant workers and the needy completely free of charge. They worked with their farmer network, which they have a large one, to ensure that they could generate more and more food and supplies. They collaborated with the NGOs because they knew that they can't reach everywhere, but NGOs were already in touch with the needy. So to the NGOs, they reached out especially to the elderly and to the children. Could the employees be left behind? Now, note, almost every company has done things for their employees. Now, the degree may vary, but almost all organizations have some story about how they took care of employees. Now, you see in this roadmap how late the employees' well-being and safety comes. Not that it was ignored, but they first thought of the nation and its stakeholders. Now, they do have the wherewithal for it, but it takes a lot to be thinking about how do I ensure in such circumstances where my first thought is about my business, how do I think of all my stakeholders? So you can see number 10 is about supporting partners. And they ensured that their campaign also broadcasted continuously to internal and external stakeholders about what they could do and do to help, and continued to provide food to the distressed. Friends, and also knowing ITC group. Now you may once say that, isn't that the same group that manufactures cigarettes? You may know over a period of time, ITC has virtually changed the complexion of the entire organization. The composition of the distribution among its various products, various lines of activity and work and business is very different now. And so they contribute far more to society at large than what you can think of as one single product, which is cigarettes, right? So there's a clear attempt and effort. And I thought, despite the fact that business is something that is not very easy to handle during such tough times, ITC was one of the groups that did not create any hoo-ha about this. You may not have even read about all the things that they did. Whereas some companies, even if they had some insurance policies for their families and salaries that were paid for a year or two, that was broadcasted across the world. What about those companies who showed both Shama? Now you may say, Shama? How does this show Shama? Remember, Shama is not just forgiveness, but also forbearance. Forbearance is not just towards people, but towards situations, towards difficult circumstances, towards adversities. And then designing a roadmap to handle those adversities. Sure, there is benefit from it, even business-wise, but not unless you put your heart and soul into it and your commitment to ensuring all your stakeholders, their distress is addressed, their pains and needs are addressed, and at the end of it, you get Shama. Okay, so this is an amazing example, my dear friends, of what a group can do in business, and how all of this goes to show that while Shama and Shama seem to be two romantic words, which are only, part of our spiritual, text, it can also be applied in business. So friends, rather than now ask you for your reflections, I'm going to ask you to put down your questions and thoughts in chat so that we can discuss. One or two last points. Start putting down your questions in chat so that we have some time for it. I mentioned last time, most of all, in today's day and age, how we treat knowledge is cut, copy, paste, download and forward, right? These are the common ways. How do we change it to creating, developing, designing, researching and uploading through our own dwelling, through our own inner journey, through our own introspections, dear friends? And therefore, I'm going to leave you with some deep reflective questions about Shama and Shama. okay, about Shama and Shama. So please go through this. I'm going to, of course, leave this on the screen for a few moments for you to look at. Okay, I will just read them. What is your initial reaction to the concept of Shama? Do you often presently react in denial, anger, judgment, self-righteousness when you are faced with adversities, when you are faced with difficult circumstances? Please dwell on that. Have you ever been granted Shama? Especially when the goof up was large? How did that make you feel? Did the distance between you and the other person reduce? And most of all, please put down 3 actions immediately after this session. It's my honest request to you. How do you see yourself building your Shama muscle? Okay, please dwell on this. Questions on Shama. How can I use any crisis, including the present one, meaningfully? I know many of you would have attended lots and lots of training programs and webinars. This was a good time from point of view of learning. What else can we do for our stakeholders, including society? Also answer the question, what is our organizational approach today when faced with a crisis? What is our mindset? Is our mindset of saving ourselves? Is our mindset of cutting costs? Is our mindset of downsizing people? Is our mindset of purely our survival? Or is it something else? Can we show the hearts and the capacities of Ruru and Maha Kapi? How can we build Shama and Shama into our organizational culture? Okay, so you have 2 very important questions today. One is, think about what are those 3 actions which can build Shama muscle, and what is it that we can do to build Shama and Shama into our organizational culture. These are the 2 most important questions, friends, that I want to leave with you. Yeah. So with that, I want to close by saying Shama is our attitude. It's not just your ability to forgive. It's your attitude towards situations. I hope today's session has clarified that. Your attitude, your capacity, your capability, your skill, your efficiency, and all that you said. Shama is the outcome of this attitude. Because when you have Shama, forbearance in your heart, whatever adversities, crises come your way, you know how to respond to it. And your action in such times brings to you fulfillment. That fulfillment, the emotion it leaves with you is Shama. Okay, so we just have about 5 to 6 minutes. I'm going to request you for any questions, thoughts, or observations that you may have. Yes, any questions? Thanks, Yashwant, for your comments and link, and Kasturi and Deepika as well. Any questions that you may wish to have answered? Shama is labor of mind, isn't it? Okay. Labor. Initially, yes, Mandar, that's a lovely question. Shama is initially probably a labor, because any capacity is like a muscle to build. And muscle, कुछ काम किए बिना, exercise किए बिना नहीं बनेगा. And remember, what do we do in exercise? We pick up that weight or perform that action which makes us uncomfortable, which is beyond our initial capacity. So initially it is a labor, but as that capacity builds, then Shama is fulfillment and peace of mind. Okay, I hope that answers your question. So you need to take some effort in adversities, hence the ITC story. They could have coolly done only things for themselves, for their employees, protected their entire, organizational resources. But they put themselves to doing much more. All their network, resources, stakeholders, everything were benefited and also utilized for the good of society. That brought them Shama. Yes. Any other question? Let's take one or two more questions before we can close. Compared to Shrama, labor of body. Okay, very nice. Shrama, labor of body. Shama, labor of mind. Yes. So initially, yes, please remember. Initially, yes, but just like Shrama brings about strength, Shama brings about mental capacity of fulfillment and of peace. Yes. Let's take one last question. Who wants to ask a question? Okay. Thanks for your comments, Alapini. Case of ITC, is it safe to say that ITC used Indian wisdom? No, not at all. Okay, that's again a good question. So, is it the use of Indian wisdom that led ITC or any company to use this, what I showed? Not really. In fact, Indian wisdom is common sense. I used ITC only as an illustration of what a large business conglomerate did, which demonstrates forbearance and which demonstrates their ability to perform action which gives fulfillment of mind, which is Shama. So Shama and Shama utilized by ITC, not necessarily using Indian wisdom. But I hope that whatever you said comes true and that every Indian organization, and why not organizations across the world also, use Indian wisdom, because there's so much on offer. So with that, my dear friends, let me say Dhanyavad, heartfelt thanks and namaste to all of you. And by the way, if any of you is very keen to learn Indian wisdom, there are opportunities to do that. You have the contacts here, and we shall be happy to induct you into Indian wisdom for no charge at all, only with the mission of learning Indian wisdom. Okay, we are called Living Philosophy Study Group, and you can connect with us. We'll introduce you to it. Over to Rupali.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you for the wonderful session, and to everybody attending the session. Very often we receive inputs from you asking more about the study group. So you have the details on the screen now. I'm going to request you to take note of these. We request, and if you still have any requests, do feel free to reach out to us. And as we close, once again, I invite you to join us on 29th of this month on the conversation around ISO standards for diversity and inclusion. And we'll see you again on the third session of Wisdom Sutras on October 26th. Do keep an eye for our emails, for our social media, for the joining link. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.